Hello and a warm welcome from the John Rylands Research Institute and Library. Why don't you come with me and find out a little bit more about our incredible literary heritage. Built for the people of Manchester over 120 years ago, we remain at the heart of a city known for its unique literary history. Our founder, Henrietta Rylands, created the library as a loving tribute to her husband, John Rylands, and to give the City of Manchester access to knowledge and literature from across the globe. The Rylands, part of the University of Manchester, is now home to over 1 million items, ranging from ancient scripts and maps to photographs and art. It's a world-in-one library, visited by researchers from all over the world to study its unique collections. We continue to explore and reveal the untold stories buried in collections, to be surprised, inspired and challenged. From the very earliest civilizations through the advent of the printed word to new digital collections, we can explore the stories of people, places, histories, legends, faiths and sciences. Standing in these beautiful spaces, you can feel the words and thoughts of the many writers and thinkers whose work is housed here and the many thousands they have inspired. It's part of a long tradition of great libraries that form a diverse literary network that crisscrosses the city, leading to Manchester becoming a UNESCO City of Literature in 2017. But let's go beyond the bookcases to some of the most interesting parts of the library, where we keep our collections. Here, we applaud the people who keep the slips, chitties, letters, books, and even emails of the famous and not so famous, and those have catalogued, conserved and looked after the collections, allowing us a glimpse into their stories. One of our biggest archives is that of the Manchester Guardian newspaper, born 200 years ago this year. The archive tells the story of how the paper that started in Manchester was soon taking on the world. Here's Janette Martin, curator of the archive, to tell us more. Hello and welcome to the John Rylands Research Institute and Library. And currently we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Manchester Guardian newspaper. And we're very lucky to have Janette Martin here with us today, who's a curator here of the exhibition, and she's got some very interesting looking objects here on the table for us to talk about. Janette, what have we got?
Well, we've got something very special here. This is the first edition of the Manchester Guardian, and as you can see, it was published on Saturday, the 5th of May, 1821, so just over 200 years ago. At this point, it cost you 7p and it was produced weekly.
Oh, right, so it wasn't a daily paper at this point?
It certainly wasn't. In the sort of early 19th century, there were taxes on papers and taxes on newspapers as well.
Wow.
So you'd have to pay 2 bundles of tax, and this sort of really reduced the availabilities of newspapers and who could actually afford them.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah. When I look at the paper and I think about how the Guardian or any paper would look today, it looks very different, doesn't it?
It certainly does. There's no headlines, there's no photographs. It's just column after column of very sort of densely typed print. So it's not very easy on the eye. And
now what I really want to know is, what was the very first article in the very first Manchester Guardian issue? So we're looking up at the top left here, aren't we? What is the first article?
Well, prepare to be underwhelmed. It's actually all the front cover at this point used to be advertisements, so it's not news, it's adverts. And the very, very first item is about a black Newfoundland bitch, so it's a dog that's been lost, and they're just putting the notice in the paper. So I don't think they'd really thought about posterity here and what would be the famous first words.
Well, that actually leads us to the question of, this has survived, but really people wouldn't have been thinking of keeping a newspaper, would they? It was very much a throwaway thing, I suppose.
They were very much a throwaway item, and you can see the quality of the paper. It's very sort of cheap, acidic, it's falling apart.
Yes.
But I think it's about people's sort of inclinations to keep things that are meaningful. So you quite often keep the first and the last of something, don't you? Or you keep the edition that's 100 years old or 150,
yes,
or the edition where you're in it.
Yeah.
So people keep things for different reasons.
So it probably survived because it's number 1, basically.
I think it did, yes.
So we'll never know if they found the dog. That might have been in number 2. So we'll have to find out maybe later on down the line on that one. So I was just wondering, actually, Did the front page of the Manchester Guardian look like this for a long time?
It certainly did. It kept all the advertisements on the front, and it was a very late adopter of the sort of new fashionable approach of headlines and actual news items and stories on the front page. I think it was about September 1952 before it decided.
That late?
That late before it decided, actually, we'll put something eye-catching and something about the news on the front. Yeah,
that must have been quite a thing for the regular readers to suddenly wake up one morning and there it was. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Gosh. And I do wonder if there was some snobbery involved, because it was, you know, the cheaper end of the market. It was the tabloids that had the news and the headlines. So,
of course,
so I do wonder.
Yes, yeah. So there we go. A tiny peek into the fascinating objects and people from the Guardian archive. One of the many collections here which have built our literary history, continuing to connect us to each other and the cities we live in. Well, I hope you've enjoyed exploring the library with me today, and hopefully we're going to see you here in person again very soon. Until then, goodbye.